Hello, networkers, and welcome back to another episode of Ask the Network Engineer, where I will answer one of your questions. And this question comes from Sheldon Moss, and he asked, "Hello, Michael. Forgive me if I misspelled or if I spelled your name incorrectly. That's perfectly okay. I have a question based on how I felt all week. I'm a junior network engineer, and I am very good at what I do, and my team is very happy with me. However, I have had the week from heck, the week from hell. You can definitely say that. It feels like I can't get anything to work successfully this week. In your career, have you ever had days or a week where things just seem to not go right in relation to network engineering? And how did you handle these days or weeks or week? I hope it's not weeks. Great question. Let's talk about that now. So I was planning of putting this question as part of a speed round. But I said, no, this actually deserves its own episode and talk about this. I actually communicated with Sheldon directly through LinkedIn and we, had a conversation. So a lot of things that I said to Sheldon, I'm going to say to you guys. Now, here's the thing. When you are in the IT field, whether you're a network engineer, a systems engineer, a desktop technician, whatever it is, you will experience, and it's usually very early in your career, you will experience one of those days where you bring something down. It happens to everybody, okay? And it has happened to me. So I want to share with you guys that particular story because I have had what I call the week from hell. Or really the day from hell, because it was really a very bad day, but there were side effects after that. So this was very early on in my career, before I was a CCIE. No excuse though, but it was very early on. And I was working for a multimedia streaming company, basically. And one of our clients is MTV. Okay, so it was kind of a big deal. It was a very high profile client. And there were particular issues one day where one particular client or user couldn't access the MTV website. Like they were having streaming problems, watching videos, music videos and things like that. Okay. So me and a colleague, we were looking at it. We're like, okay, well, they're having problems. We didn't know what that meant because, so we were up there doing trace routes. We're looking at the performance. Maybe it's the customer's network because we didn't see any particular problem. We're troubleshooting, trying to figure out why this user is complaining about connectivity problems to the MTV website that was hosting this content. So I said, you know what? Let's do a debug. Okay, let's kind of see what's going on the router. So I went ahead and typed in the debug command. Enter. But I did the incomplete debug command. And I knew that, but was too late once I pressed enter on that keyboard. I did a debug IP packet detail. If you do not know what that command does, okay? And with the number of connections through that router, it brought down the MTV router. It was no longer responsive. I panicked. I brought down the router for MTV, the high profile client for this company. Okay? Because I did an incomplete debug command. What I was trying to do though was to create the ACO. This is the best practice so you don't go into my same footsteps, right? You create the ACO that you want, like the source to destination, because we knew those details already though. Then you associate that with a debug command, because if not, you're going to get everything, which means it's going to hang the router, which is what it did. So we had to call the ISP. They went to the cage and they rebooted the router. And I remember while we were calling them to reboot the router, I had to go to the bathroom. I had to get some water on my face. So I'm walking to the bathroom and my legs, they stopped working. I'm like on the wall, just trying to pull myself into the bathroom because I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had brought down a big, high-profile client. The irony about what happened that day, because you're probably thinking, were you fired? I was not fired. What happened was, I don't know what you call it, faith, act of God, coincidence, whatever it is. There was already a problem with the website. The website wasn't working anyway. So the router being down was like, okay, well, we're already having problems anyway. I was the luckiest person in the world. I'm not crying, by the way, I have allergies. I was very lucky that day. I was saved. But that environment that I was working in was very, very stressful for me. The management team and the company that I was working in, they're very aggressive. Like they make comments like, you better do this stuff correctly, because if not, you go to HR and get a pink slip, you're fired. They talk like that to their employees. So it was a very high stressful environment. So I thought I brought down a high profile client for the company that I'm working at. They're going to fire me. I bought a brand new condo. I have a no, actually I didn't have a car at that time. I have a brand new condo, and if they fire me, how am I going to pay for that? So a lot of things were going through my mind at that particular time period, though. But the point was, I was saved because it could have been that their website was perfectly fine, and I brought down their network, and there could have been consequences in that regard. Okay. So what did I learn from that particular experience? Okay. So I was saved. Well, I have learned that, number one, to think before you do things. Now, I know you're thinking like, I'm assuming you thought about what you were doing. I did. Okay. But not cautiously, I guess. So what I have been doing ever since then, and been doing that for 15 years, basically, right, is I do prep configurations. Ask anybody who knows me directly as a network engineer. They will say, yeah, Michael does his prep configs. I do it all the time for any project, okay? So if I'm doing any kind of troubleshooting, any kind of configuration for a client or for the company that I will be working for, whether it's the Department of Energy and the financial bank that I worked at before, I would actually write out, because I know syntax very well in my head. So I would actually write out the actual syntax of what changes or what new configuration I would be doing. Okay. Like step one, I'm going to be adding these commands. I'll be using these show commands to validate certain type of operations. I'll be confirming that this works, that we can access this network and this service and things like that. So I have like particular test plans of different things I will be doing and checking when I make various type of configurations. Another thing that I learned that day is I refuse to work in a hostile, stressful, overworked environment. So that company, we had a lot of bad days. And this is not just me bringing down that router that one time. We had a lot of different experiences with things just going down. I remember a particular day where the entire data center was down. And I don't mean like there was a power issue. There was something that wasn't working. We didn't know it was with the servers, with the network. We didn't know what it was. Okay. So we were like in the knock. All the engineers were in there. I mean, we had all the network engineers in there, the system administrators, the desktop people, the management were in there, the CTOs were there. Everybody was like actually behind a keyboard trying to figure out what the hell's going on here. It was such a stressful environment. Or the time, another situation here that was very stressful, because of legal issues or something like that, that we had to move all the equipment, the 200 plus servers, the core switches, the distribution switches, the edge routers, everything, okay? From one data center to another data center overnight. That was a very, very long night. Oh man. And there's more stories like that. So it was a very stressful time. And if you know that if you are stressed out, if you are not getting enough sleep, you're more prone to making mistakes. So that's why after my time at that particular company, okay, when I interview for other companies, I paid attention to the environment. I paid attention to how the management staff is, their personalities, to even the people I would be working with, understanding kind of what are the challenges within that particular company. Okay. Because at the other company, there was a lot of politics involved. So we couldn't do things that we really wanted to do. It's like management was basically micromanaging everybody. Okay. So I did not want to be in that kind of a situation. Okay. Let the engineers take care of what needs to be taken care of. So I asked those particular questions to understand the environment, to understand the management staff, and to talk to the engineers. What do they like to do after work? Are they humble? Things like that. And usually I get to determine if that is the best environment. And believe it or not, I have never, ever worked in a hostile environment ever again, or had a client where that's a hostile client and is a very stressful type of environment. Because I have been very selective in the type of places that I worked. And that, of course, helps for being more successful in what you're doing at your job or for the client that you're working for. Another thing that I've also learned is, as I said before, is you have to be humble. You know what you know what you do not know. And you have to embrace that, okay? Because if you think about it, it makes sense. That's how most issues usually happen when somebody brings something down. That maybe they do not know a lot about a particular technology. So they just go ahead and kind of configure it because they know a few commands. But if they do not know what they're doing, they can bring down the entire network. I've seen that too many times. Okay. And so I've learned that if there's something that I have not had experience with, I will let you know. So let me wrap this up. So those things that I do. After that situation where I brought down a router for a high profile client, I've learned to be more prepared with presenting with a strategy, a plan, having prep configurations, to choose to work in environments that isn't hostile, stressful, overworked, okay? And to be humble. I know what I know what I do not know, okay? And also just to stay calm and relaxed. Because the thing is, we all make mistakes, okay? We all make mistakes. And when you're starting out in your career, you're gaining experience, okay? And you will encounter mistakes here and there, and you may definitely encounter bringing down a network. I've seen people bring down networks all the time. And I kind of remember I've been there before. I remember a friend of mine, he never encountered an issue like that before. And I remember he was logging on to a WAN aggregation router, and he was applying some kind of ACL, and he brought down the router. All right. He wasn't fired. He was fine, but he felt bad about that. He said, man, I'm such a bad network engineer. I'm not a good engineer. I said, don't say that at all, my friend. You're going to be a different person moving forward. And I told him my story. I said, dude, I did a debug command. This is the debug command that I typed in. And he said, what? Michael Tomatis did that? I said, yes, I did. But yes, it was early on in my career. This is early on in your career. Okay? And the point is, you can now learn from that because you can see that bad things can happen if you're not prepared or if you do not know what you're doing. All right? And he kind of, he felt better a little bit, it take days to get over that. But right now, he's working for WebEx. He's one of the lead engineers over there. Not even a big problem for him. Because those kind of experiences makes us the engineers that we truly are, right? It's like, how can you lead if you haven't followed before, right? You have to encounter a setback to really kind of put yourself in check. That you just can't be just logging on to equipment and just doing whatever you want to do. There's consequences from that. You can bring down an entire network, okay? And you could be fired. And if you are not fired, then learn from that. So I'm just kind of giving you guys my particular experiences, how I felt, how sad it was. I felt really, really sad. I felt like I sucked as a network engineer. The one thing that I loved, but it was just a setback. And it made me kind of put me in check. And that was great because it made me the network engineer that I am today. And we are done with this episode. So Sheldon, thank you very much for the great question. And keep in mind that it's a learning experience. That's really what it is. It will make you a better network engineer. And I want to hear from you guys. What are some of your stories of you bringing down a network or a router or a firewall or whatever it may be that made it a very bad week or a bad day? I'd like to hear those stories. So post those stories below in the comments. And also, or anything about being a network engineer or anything in the networking field or networking related content questions, also post those questions below in the comments and they will come up in the future episodes on this channel. So thank you guys for watching this video. It means a lot. Please subscribe to our channel, but also check out and support our training at routhub.net. And until next time, keep networking.